Hello, my dear friends. Today I'd like to share with you two great stories that relate to an incident in this week's Parsha. The Chumash tells of the Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Babel that the people built because they wanted to do battle with God. They thought they could build a towering structure into the sky and then they would be able to fight with the Ribono Shel Olam. So the Ribono Shel Olam, when he saw that was happening, the Chumash says, "Vayered Hashem liros es ha'ir v'es ha'migdal." God went down to see the city and the tower, asher banu b'nei Adam, that the people had built. So Rashi says, what does it mean God went down? God, he can't see from up in heaven. He has to descend in order to be able to see the tower. So Rashi says, Lo hutzruch l'kach. God didn't need to go down. El rabogel lamed l'dayanim shlo yarshiu hanidon ad sheyiru v'yavinu. It's a lesson for judges that they shouldn't paskin a punishment for somebody who is under investigation until ad sheyiru v'yavinu. They have to go see for themselves and understand. Don't rely on hearsay. Don't make assumptions. Investigate. Go take a look. Just like God, he wanted to see the tower, even though God didn't really need to see it. But God did that in order to teach an important lesson for the judges, that the judges should not hastily formulate a decision. And Rashi makes the same comment in Parshas Vayera, when the Torah tells us that God sent angels to destroy Sodom and Amorah. So in the beginning of the episode, God says, Er denov ve'era hakitzakasasa haba elai asu. I'm going to go down and check whether the cries, they were people who were persecuted others and they caused great pain to individuals. So God said, let's go down or I'll go down and take a look and see if that's the case. So Rashi says again, Lomed l'dayanim, it teaches for judges, shelo yifsaku dini nefashos el b'riyah, that a judge should not paskin capital offenses unless he sees for himself. So in both instances, God doesn't need to investigate. He doesn't need to move from the heavens. God is every place. But the Torah expresses it that way because it should be a powerful lesson for the judges that they have to see on their own. And this is a broader lesson because Yisrael Salanta points out everybody is a judge. We all make judgments all the time. And before a person reaches a conclusion, a person has to investigate. If God Almighty wrote in His Torah, Er denov ve'era, I'll go down and see, or Vayered Hashem liros, or God went down to see, which is something that is really a distortion of the reality. But God wrote that to teach us that you have to be, even God, so to speak, has to go take a look himself. He has to see the tower himself. He can't rely on, he knows there's a tower, he heard about it. He has to take a look with his own eyes, again, so to speak, before he formulates a decision and he punishes the people. So this is true throughout life. People are constantly making decisions without knowing all the facts. They hear about something, somebody tells them, and they get all excited. And the first thing to do when if you hear about something that's inappropriate, improper, speak to the person, talk to the person. You shouldn't accuse them. You could say, I just want to clarify, say it in a nice way, but you have to talk to the person to find out what are the real facts of the situation. So here's two great stories that highlight and illustrate this point. Rav Moshe Feinstein was once sitting and eating breakfast, and there was a guest with him at the breakfast table. Rav Moshe wanted to pour a glass of milk. There were 2 cartons of milk on the table. So Rav Moshe reached for one carton, and then he picked it up, and then he put it down. Then he reached for the other carton. So the guest that was there understood everything that Rav Moshe does is thought out carefully. He understood the reason why Rav Moshe put down one carton and took the other one is because there were 2 different companies. They had 2 different hechsherim. They were supervised by different agencies. And when Rav Moshe saw on the first carton the supervision, Rav Moshe decided, I'm not comfortable with that supervision. So he put it down and he took the other carton. So this guest, with good intentions, which oftentimes people with good intentions could destroy the world, and do terrible harm. So this man with good intentions, he has to let people know that Moshe Feinstein doesn't hold of this supervision. He has to publicize it. So he went and he started to tell people, I was at Ramosha's house, and he would not, even a glass of milk from this hechsher, he would not drink. So the word, once you say that Ramosha Feinstein has a certain position about something, it spreads like wildfire. And before you know it, everybody knew that Ramosha didn't want to drink milk from this particular company, and the stores could no longer sell that company's milk, because who's going to buy milk if Ramosha says it's not kosher? And the manufacturer, it got back to the manufacturer, that the orders were all canceled. The manufacturer couldn't understand until somebody finally told him, Ramosha made it clear that your milk is not kosher, that the supervision is inadequate. So the manufacturer, his whole business was collapsing. So he ran to Ramosha, and to his house, and he said, the Rosh Hashiva publicized that our milk is no good, that it's destroying us. So Moshe says, I publicized that your milk's no good. I drink your milk. Here, look at the refrigerator. I have a carton of your milk. That's what I drank today for breakfast. Your milk. What do you mean I publicized? But so the man says, yeah, but Rosh Hashiva, people are saying that you said that my product is not kosher. So Moshe thought for a moment or two, and he says, oh, I know what happened. A few days ago, I had a guest at the table, and there were 2 cartons on the table, and I took your carton of milk, and then I put it down, and I took the other one. So, but you know why I did that? He said, Ramosha said, because when I picked it up, I saw that it was empty. So it was empty. I put down the carton, I took the other one. So look how people made a whole shtickle Torah. They made a whole production out of the fact that Ramosha didn't want to drink the first carton of milk. So this fellow from the company said, the owner of the company says, she's got to do something to salvage our reputation. So Moshe immediately wrote a letter testifying that he holds that it's a very good supervision, it's a good product, and he himself drinks it in his house. And that way the person was able to correct the problem that had occurred. But it's such a terrific story, how people formulate conclusions. If people heard that Ramosha thinks that the hashgacha is no good, they need to, just like Kadosh Baruch Hu, he went down to see, go talk to Ramosha and ask him if that's exactly what occurred. Don't trust hearsay that somebody said that the Rosh Hashiva doesn't drink this milk. Here's the second story. There was a newly married couple in Yerushalayim probably about 150 years ago, the time of Shmuel Salant, who was the Rav of Yerushalayim. So this fellow was a chassid, and he was sitting at the table on Pesach. This is his first Pesach with his kala. They were newly married, just maybe a few days before Pesach. And during the meal, he's eating his soup, and he looks down at the bowl of soup, and what do you think he sees? He sees a grain of wheat floating in the soup. So he gives out a yell. He says, "It's treif. This is chametz. It's by Yerav Ha'imotzi. You're not allowed to have chametz in the house, and the food is treif." And he tells his wife, "We're leaving. We're not staying here. The kitchen is treif. If they're serving soup with chametz, because if you put a grain in the soup, it becomes chametz. I'm not staying here." So reluctantly, he stormed out. So reluctantly, the kala goes with him, and she pleads with him, "Please don't make such rash decisions." But he wouldn't hear. He says it's treif. Your parents are serving treif food. Your mother, your father, whatever. So she pleaded with him, "Let's go to the Rav of Yerushalayim. Let's go to Shmuel Salant and talk to him before you make such a rash decision, and destroy the whole Shalom Bayis and everything." So he reluctantly agreed to go to see Shmuel Salant. So Shmuel Salant hears the story, and he knows the family, and he knows it's inconceivable that they would be serving chametz on Pesach. So then he thinks for a moment. He was a very wise person, and he says to the chassan, "Tell me, how long is it that you're married?" The chassan says, "A week or two, or whatever." So Shmuel Salant says, "Can I please see your shtreimel?" the beaver hat that they wore on their heads. Well, Chassan is surprised. Why does he need to see his shtreimel? So he says, I would like to see your shtreimel. So he takes the shtreimel and he turns it upside down, and guess what happens? Out of the shtreimel falls grains of wheat, because there was a minhag in Yerushalayim that after the chuppah they would throw grains of wheat at the chassan and kala. So the grains ended up in his shtreimel, and when he was eating the soup, so what did he do? He bent down his head in order to be able to see the soup and put the spoon in. When he bent down, the grain went from his shtreimel into the soup. And here he had made a whole production out of this, and he had formulated all sorts of conclusions. He just about destroyed either his wife would have abandoned him because he doesn't want to have anything to do with the family, or the family would have been, if she would have stayed with him, the family would have insisted that they get divorced. I mean, the consequences were so enormous, and the whole thing could have been averted if the person had discussed with his mother-in-law. He said, look, there's grains in the soup, and she could have showed him the kitchen, the care, and everything. Okay, maybe they wouldn't have realized right away what the cause was. But you don't make such rash decisions without investigation. God Almighty Himself investigates before He makes a decision. He wants to see the migdal with His own eyes. And He does that not because He needs to, but so that people should learn. You gotta see it yourself. You gotta talk to the parties. You gotta find out. You gotta make sure that the information is correct. And that's a terrific lesson from the Rashi. In this week's Parsha, and it's the Rashi in Parshas Vayera, that if God Himself, with a capital H, does not formulate conclusions until He sees and He investigates and He explores, then we have to follow suit as well. And by doing that, we will avoid all sorts of terrible errors and mistakes and consequences and machlokas and fights and anger and animosity that often takes place between individuals and within society.